I'm Kirk Harnack. On This Week in Radio Tech, I'm joined by Tarr, Tobin, and our guest, Andy Linton from Ireland. We're talking about the National EAS test. Where's my copper? And a half dozen war stories for you. Listen, laugh, and learn. Twert is up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is This Week in Radio Tech, episode 90, recorded July 6, 2011. War Stories. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Axia Audio and the new Radius IP audio console. Feature-rich, affordable IP audio consoles from Axia. On the web at axiaaudio.com. Plus, check out some of the 2,200 Axia IP audio studios worldwide at clients.axiaaudio.com. Hello there, it's time for This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, I'm glad to be here. This is a fun show to do. I started this show a couple of years ago and got conned a couple of engineers to do the show with me. Three regulars. One of them's not with us tonight, so he's not so regular. Tom Ray is on hiatus this week. But on the show this week, to tell some war stories, are my friends and colleagues. First of all, from Manhattan, the best-dressed engineer in radio, it's Chris Tobin. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Kirk. Good evening. Yes, it's going to be a fun time. War stories at best. I work with the CBS Radio Group here in New York City. 6 stations, 3 AM, 3 FM, and we have a good time with technologies. That's what I do. I'm the broadcast technologist on staff. Find ways to generate revenue with technologies and keep my job, basically.
You get to pay for your own job by finding ways to bring revenue in the door, huh?
Exactly. I'm no longer a financial liability. I'm now a financial asset.
You know, that's something we ought to talk about, and maybe on the show it'll come up in a war story. Let's pause that and get the other introductions done, and maybe we'll return to that. Chris Tarr from Mukwonago, Wisconsin. Did I get it right, Chris?
You certainly did. Mukwonago, Wisconsin, suburb of Milwaukee. I am the Director of Engineering for Intercom's radio stations in Madison and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I also run the website broadcastengineering.info, and I'm also known as the Geek Jedi.
And so you are. So you are. Let's head way east now. And he's been on the show once before. In fact, it was a War Stories episode, but we've asked him to come back and tell some more war stories. Some Irish war stories about Irish radio. That was all really awful. Andy Linton from Waterford, Ireland. Hi, Andy.
Yeah, hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are and wherever you may be. I just wondered, why did you do a Pakistani accent just there? I'm not quite sure about that.
Well, why do you have a British accent?
No, that's a long story for another day.
Okay. Do you ever do an Irish accent to appease your fellow countrymen there in Ireland?
It's not good enough, and it wouldn't appease them at all.
Andy, tell us about what you do with Total Broadcast.
Okay, well, we're a consultancy. We're a broadcast engineering consultancy, and we serve the radio and TV industry here in Ireland and anywhere else that will have us.
Yeah, in fact, I've talked to you in some pretty odd places. Weren't you in the Suez Canal or someplace?
I was down in the Gulf of Sinai there last year. We're doing some work on the Isle of Man at the moment, which is a tiny little island between Ireland and the UK. And a very strange place, lovely place, but very strange in that it's not officially part of the UK. It's not officially part of any other jurisdiction, and they're not even part of the European Union. Very small little place.
What's it part of?
Interesting.
They're just on their own out there?
They call themselves it's not even a principality, because they don't have a prince. I'm not really sure what they are. A crown dependency is what they're officially called, which means they're dependent on the British Queen. She is their monarch, but she's a lord. She's not the Queen of Man, she's the Lord of Man. Look, it's a really strange story and very interesting.
That is wild. What kind of work are you doing there on the Isle of Man?
We're building some studios for them. Manx Radio is the government station there. They have their own government and they have their own radio station. on AM and FM. So again, it was nice. I was able to see an AM transmitter, which I don't see very often these days in this part of the world. So we're building some acoustic rooms for them and installing some equipment, some furniture, and they're changing from some quite old analog equipment to Axia equipment, happily.
Cool. All right. Oh, that's good news. Good news. Hey, we're going to, in fact, Axia, well, thank you for that beautiful segue. Axia is the sponsor of this episode of This Week in Radio Tech. And I hope you'll wait with bated breath for me to tell you all about Axia here in about 20 or 30 minutes or so. We're going to hit a few topical things before we get into our War Stories episode. We got a little bit of a theme on War Stories, and the theme is Plan B. Now, what in the world could Chris Tobin, Chris Tarr, and Andy Linton have for us in terms of Plan B War Stories? We'll get right into that in just a few minutes. I want to hit a couple of topical items, things that are kind of U.S.-centric, I suppose. There's a headline in Radio World Online, rwonline.com, and it's FEMA, that's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA crafts EAS best technical practices. So I'm going to give you a couple lines from the article here. The National EAS best practices are the topic when officials from FEMA's Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, that's IPAWS, and industry experts take part in a webinar, and that webinar is going on tomorrow, Thursday. Tomorrow, Thursday, July the 7th. In order to prepare EAS participants for the November 9th National EAS test, FEMA, IPAWS, and the FCC are partnering with others to draft the Technical Best Practices Guide on end-to-end National EAS message procedures. Boy, lot to take in there. There's a link on that website. You can contribute, and you can also visit the website, the National Dialogue on the Emergency Alert System. There's a link in this article. Go to rwonline.com and look for the headline FEMA crafts EAS best technical practices. I haven't seen these. There is a webinar coming up, and it's going on Thursday, July the 7th. The webinar starts at 12:30 Eastern Time, and the presenters are Manny Centeno, FEMA IPAWS EAS Test and Demonstration Program Manager, also Kelly Williams, the Senior Director for the NAB Science and Technology in the Engineering and Tech Department, and also Chris Brandt, who is a head-end engineer. You can also sign up for the webinar through a link. So let me ask Chris Tobin. Chris, what do you think these best practices are? Have you got any idea what they're talking about here?
Unfortunately, no, I don't. I did not get a chance to review. But if it's for the, let's see, I read about the webinar. I don't know what the hoopla is about this test. It's real straightforward. You receive the test, you forward it out. The instructions are quite clear. I'm not sure what the best practices could be. Reboot the box, check your wire connections, tighten screws. I'm not certain what to make of it. I'm going to do some research, and I'm very curious. We just did a monthly test today. We originated it at our station at WINS, and it was very straightforward, a 5-step procedure, and we did it. So the origination will take place, in this case, in Washington, I'm assuming, and then we receive it and forward it. So it's just like forwarding any other monthly test. I have no idea what best practices means. It doesn't make sense.
I'm looking at some of the comments on their website, and the comments and questions coming in are really pretty wide-ranging. Somebody's asking about cellular services and how that relates to EAS and IPAWS. EAS Participant Virtual Roundtable on June 9th. Is EAS equipment the weak link in the quality of the whole system? Harmonizing EAS and program content playout and EAS GIS mapping. So that monitoring assignments, safe area, content suggestions, co-load facilities, ideas for EAS at those, voluntary cap compliance until the next generation of EAS implementation. Man, there's a whole lot of comments here, even FIPS codes, the national test, and the cost of public outreach. So, when you mention EAS, it just seems like you open this huge can of worms, and yet some people, Chris, you're one of them, seem to be able to boil this down to its bare essentials and say, look, this is not that complicated. You receive tests, you put out tests. I guess people here are putting in ideas for the system as a whole and not just their individual.
I think they're trying to figure out what the problem is before it's been tested. I mean, that's the idea behind this national test. I mean, I think what really broadcasters should focus on is how will the FCC respond if a broadcaster fails to receive the test properly or pass it on, because there was some talk of being fined if you didn't do it right. Or I didn't get all the details, but I've been reading some interesting threads. I'm like, wow, the people are just way out of whack here. It's either this is an idea to generate revenue for the federal government by finding people, or this is truly an attempt to be able to say, hey, we have a national emergency that we need to get to the masses. That's what it comes down to. EAS has a lot of flaws and it needs to be addressed, but you got to test it first and see. I don't think testing it in public makes sense. We should be doing a closed circuit test. It should not go on the air.
I got to be honest. I mean, I got to at least hats off to FEMA for being part of the process. I mean, that was one of the major concerns early on, was that, you know, this government agency was going to take over EAS, you know, the FCC letting it go to FEMA, and that it was going to be a whole lot of trying to guess what we're going to do next. And it seems like, at least for now, FEMA's done a very good job of getting ahead of that and developing these workshops and things like that, even if it's something that we don't think we need, to at least get out in front and let us be a part of the process, which was a major concern, honestly, when we found out that FEMA was going to be taking part with EAS, of, you know, how, you know, who's going to be in charge, how's it going to be run, are we going to have any say in how this all works? And it sounds like so far they've been real good about being open and transparent and allowing us to kind of have a voice in the direction that this is going to take.
But I still think a closed circuit test should be done first.
Now, how do you do a closed circuit test when everybody's picking up people over the air? Oh, the CAP system is not over the air, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, the national EAS test isn't a CAP test. That's actually an EAS test. It'll actually be separate from CAP.
Well, the closed test you do is it's to the LP1s of the LP1s and was it LP2s? However they got it, I forget how we got it set up now across the country. That's how you do the closed circuit test. You to the people that are going to be relaying it, and then the next test can be an actual over the air, because now we know that the relay stations have what's needed. So it's 2 steps. The LP1s and the primary insertion points get what they need. We get it. We check it. Yep, it worked. We got it. Beautiful. Next test will be an actual on the air for those downstream. So now you've got 2 steps and 2 ways of verifying what's happening. Otherwise, now we do this one test, blast it out across the entire nation of all those participating, and we have failures, and it's a question of where did the failure take place? Local station, LP1, or both? You know, it's just more work than needs to be. That's how I look at it. Because we did a similar closed circuit test here in New York City on the LECC. We did several dozen with the city government before we started putting out a formal plan and saying, okay, this is how it's going to be. Here's what we're going to do. And New York City City Hall was involved, and it worked like a champ. The closed circuit test revealed a lot about what we didn't realize. And then when we did the actual on air, I think we had like a failure rate of 1%, you know, compared to what it could have been. It was just the model we used.
All right. Well, that webinar is on Thursday, the 7th of July, and you can sign up for it. There's a link at Radio World. Just go to that article about FEMA and the best practices for EAS. Hey, and moving on to another subject that Andy can participate in too, copper theft. This is just such a widespread problem, especially with the value of copper, and I guess thieves' desire for money for money's sake, or money for perhaps illicit drugs. But it's a problem. Andy, tell us about, are you guys having this kind of problem in Ireland where people are stealing copper from transmitter sites?
A little bit, but not as much as I think you guys are getting there. Funnily enough, I was talking to a guy that does some tower rigging only last week. And we were talking about exactly the same thing. And he said this guy looks after a number of towers around the country. And he said, luckily they haven't had any, if you like, live copper taken. Mm-hmm. However, there has been, he said that he went to some site where they'd left half a roll of, I think he said it was 3/4 inch heliax, a feeder laying on a drum, and he got there and that was gone. So, happily, I haven't heard of any incidences of live copper going, although on one of our sites that we look after, which is about 30 miles from here, it's on top of a relatively large hill. Funnily enough, we had, about maybe a year and a half ago, we had a tower come down there, and it came down in a storm. And when we cleared it up, there were some sections of the tower that were twisted, which we left laying on the ground outside the compound. They landed outside the area of the compound on some woodland next door, if you like. And we left them there, and we kept saying, oh, one day we'll go up there and we'll cut those up and we'll take them away. And we went up there a month ago and they were gone. Happy days. So I don't mind it when someone takes scrap, but no, happily, there's been no instances I know of live copper being taken here. I know one guy, and not in the broadcast world now, who lives not very far from my business partner, Andy Green, lives one of his neighbours, and this guy went away on vacation, and when he came back 2 weeks later, him and his wife and family were sitting in their house, and it started to rain, and the rain started coming in through the ceiling. And they could work out why this was until they looked and found that all the lead flashing had been stolen in their absence. And when they asked the neighbours, had they seen anyone, they said, yeah, there was a company came along, some guys put on the high-vis jackets and hard hats, and they were working away during the day. We thought you were getting some roofing done. And these guys were stealing their lead flashing.
They were brazen, weren't they, putting on the high-visibility jackets?
Yeah.
And a truck with a company name, probably.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, exactly. And and everyone thought it was a bona fide thing to do. I think if you're going to do something like that, not that I'd advocate it, but if you're going to do something like that, at least make it look as if you're bona fide. Don't do it at night, you know?
If you're going to do a job,
do it
safety
right. Procedures as well.
That's right. Get the safety lines. Chris Tarr, they're in Muckwonago or in the Milwaukee area. What are you seeing about theft of copper or other precious metals?
Well, you know, I've got there's this competitor's transmitter site that's just filled with copper, and I could give you the address. No, I'm just kidding. We really haven't had much of a problem. You know, there have been some kind of one-off things. Cellular sites seem to be taking the brunt of that. But you know, I haven't heard of any of the AM sites in town being hit. Now, obviously, nationwide, I've heard stories, and I've also heard some of the clever ways that people are, you know, protecting their copper. By dipping it in asphalt and painting it pink and, you know, all these various things. But we've been lucky here. We really haven't much of a problem with that.
You know, cell sites really do have a lot more. I don't think I'm giving away information that a copper thief wouldn't already know. A cell site probably has a lot more copper in the coax lines accessible from the ground level than most broadcast transmitter sites do. At least the ones I take care of may have one or two transmitters, but my goodness, think about all the copper lines going up a cell tower. Sometimes you can't see the tower.
Right, exactly, and that's why they're attractive targets. Is, you know, what they do is they take it and they strip it, and then they just burn off the vinyl jackets on them, and you know, take them all apart and sell just the copper out of them. So yeah, I see a lot of that with cell sites, but I haven't heard much about that around here with broadcast.
You know, I've never taken a hacksaw to a live 25 kilowatt TPO, you know, 3 1/8 inch FM transmitter line, but I would imagine that, you know, you get a lot of sparking and it could hurt pretty badly. But at a cell site, what's the TPO of those transmitters? Is it, you know, 25, 50 watts, 100 watts, 300 watts? It's something that a thief could probably cut through and get away with without killing himself.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, it's all high frequency stuff too. So it's pretty easy to get in there and get out. And you know, in some cases, you know, the equipment fails right away. Sometimes it doesn't, because obviously, if you cut properly, it's not as much of an issue. But yeah, you know, you see that a lot with the cell and the low power stuff. I think a lot of the copper thieves, if they were smart, they wouldn't be copper thieves. You know, they look at those larger size conduits and think that there's probably a lot of voltage there and try to go for easier targets. And not only that, but with the cell towers, they're shorter, they're easier to climb. You know, it's all about, you know, it's all about the easier target. If there's two cars next to each other, one door is locked, the other one's open, they'll go for the open one every time.
Sure.
Didn't I read somewhere that some AM sites were finding that their ground radials were being torn out of the ground? Has that happened?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's
we had that happen to us at one of our sites.
Yeah.
While we had riggers on the tower doing some tower light work and painting, they noticed some people scurrying about on the ground, and they realized there was something nefarious going on. And turns out they were pulling up the ground radials at the transmitter site.
Wow.
We lost a day's worth of painting and tower light replacement because the riggers had to go and be witnesses at the police department, as the people that were doing it were arrested on site with a boatload of copper, because our transmitter site is an island in Long Island Sound, and they came by boat. I know it sounds odd, but they came by boat on the side of the island you can't see from the mainland, and began pulling out the copper at the water line and just walked up the hill.
Oh.
What's that?
I'm sorry, Chris, your audio cut out for just a second, or at least it did for me. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so they just they went on the side of the island you can't see from the mainland and brought a boat, came on shore and started pulling out the copper. So we had some pirateers.
And well, that's so tough for a radio station. I don't know if you can. I guess you could call that an insurance loss. But hey, I've put in new ground systems before, and I tell you this was probably 12 years ago. The price of copper to put in a new system had to be way more than the money that you'd get for the copper taking it to a scrap dealer.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a lot more laborious to put a system in than it is to pull it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
oh yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, in the chat room, they're saying that, hey, scrap dealers in some states now are required to know the identity of the scrap seller and have perhaps some understanding of where the scrap came from.
What is meant by that term pink copper?
Yeah, Chris Tarr mentioned this.
Yeah, one of the tricks we do sometimes with new ground systems is we take the copper and we paint it pink before it goes underground with the pink surveyor's paint. And most of the scrap dealers around the area know, hey, if somebody comes in with like the soft strand copper and it's pink, that it was probably stolen from one of our sites, and to give us a call and make sure that we don't have anything missing.
Very good.
Huh. Okay.
You do.
That's
How you doing?
That is an interesting idea. Is it the right shade of pink, or is this just? Oh, it's surveyor's paint.
Just the surveyors. Yeah, the pink surveyor's paint, like you do for monitor points or whatever.
It wasn't just your favorite color, Chris. It wasn't that.
Yeah. Well, it also matches my handbag and my shoes. But yeah, you just either completely or every so many feet, do a nice big old spot of pink paint, and that way if it ever turns up at the copper dealer, they know, or the junk dealer, scrap dealer, they know that if it's painted pink, that it's probably taken from a broadcast site.
Andy, what about other kinds of theft? I guess besides copper, do you in your part of the world, do you see transmitter sites getting broken into, or studios broken into, and gear or wire taken out of studios?
I'm not familiar with any studios being illegally entered, I don't think, but there have been a few situations where transmitter sites get broken into, and if it's a remote site, obviously, well, most sites are remote, certainly FM sites. There was one about 3 years ago up in County Wicklow, and this was a low power relay of a station, a rebroadcast, and so the station, the station went off air, and when they went to look, they found that everything was gone. I mean, it was a small cabin, and the door had been opened, and all the equipment was gone, which was kind of bad news. But then, funnily enough, the same day in Dublin, which is only about 20 miles away, a pirate radio station came on the same frequency. And it didn't take a great deal of time to work out where that equipment had gone, and it was retrieved, and the perpetrator was apprehended, as they say.
Oh my goodness, that really got me. Go on the same frequency, not far away.
The guy didn't even have the wherewithal to change the frequency. He just switched it back on.
Of course, if they were smart, they wouldn't be thieves. So there you go.
Hey, this is a great segue. Speaking of smart, we have a smart guy within our midst here. It's Chris Tarr, because he's smart because he just passed the test today. Chris, why don't you tell us about the test you passed today?
Well, I didn't actually. I found out I passed today. I took the test.
You found out? Okay.
Right. It's the Society of Broadcast Engineers Certified Senior Radio Engineering Exam.
Senior?
I know. Isn't that something? Essentially, that's the test. You have to have 10 years of engineering experience. It's a tough one, 50 questions plus an essay, and I actually took it twice. The first time I took it, I didn't pass, but they allow you to take retakes. So I studied some more and signed up for the second testing session, and studied some more and studied some more again and studied even more, and just found out today, actually about 30 seconds before we went on, I got the email that I had passed, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay, so the drinks are on you, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, here. I've got Coke Zero right here for you.
Hey, there you go. There you go.
But again, that kind of goes back to my feelings with the SBE tests and the certifications. I think they're great, and this is something that I paid for on my own. I did on my own. There's really no, there's nothing that kind of pushed me to do it. It's not like it's a requirement for my job or anything else. It was just something that I feel pretty strongly about. And, like any other certification, or lots of certifications out there, you have to recertify after so many years. And it just kind of, the challenge is keeping yourself up to date with what's going on in the industry and kind of always learning and participating and those sorts of things that, I feel pretty strongly about. So, it's kind of neat because, again, it was just one of those things that I decided to do on my own and went and got it done. But, if you're in engineering, you're considering getting into it, definitely look into what the SBE has to offer. And especially nowadays, there's no FCC tests anymore. There's no FCC licenses. So it's one of the best ways to tell potential employers that you know what you're doing.
You can go to the SBE website at sbe.org, and there's a tab there for certification, and it can tell you all about the different certification levels, the exam schedule, preparation for the exams, recertification, technical books, and they even have an online study guide to help you out. Chris, did you use the online study guide, or how did you get ready for this test?
I did. I used they have a preparation test software that is what's interesting about it. And FBE, you really can't talk a whole lot about the content of the test, but I will tell you that what I found interesting and actually very helpful was that the questions that are on the preparation software aren't the ones that are on the test generally. They're similar, and so therefore, it's nice in one way because it's not like you can buy the prep software, shotgun it, and pass, but it helps you kind of lead yourself in the direction where that something like this from this along this line is going to be on the test. So if you don't know it, you should learn it. And I found that very helpful. And so I really do recommend that. They offer it for sale, and you can download it and start using it right away. And it's just a great way to kind of just prepare yourself for what you're going to run into and identify your weaknesses, because you can go back and see what you got wrong. And there are some things that I read and went, holy cow, I've never dealt with that before. I don't even know the answer. I need to go, look that up or, learn some more about that subject. So I highly recommend it.
So you were able to see what questions you missed on the first taking of the exam, and then did you use that to brush up? Did you brush up in those areas, or did you kind of brush up in everything?
They don't tell you. You don't get the results of the tests that you pass or fail. You just know if you passed or you failed. I was talking about on the sample test that you can get. The study preparation material has a practice test you can take, and that one you can find out what you got wrong. But again, those questions generally aren't the ones that are on the exam. Those are ones that are just similar or from the same, kind of the same areas of expertise. So you kind of get a representation of what's going on or what's going to be in the test. So you can kind of know, okay, this area of knowledge like satellites, or something that I wasn't real strong on because I don't deal with them much. But there are some questions in there about that. So I needed to read up on that and learn more about how they work and how they function and some of the things that go on with that. So it was very helpful as a guide of just, okay, here's what I really need to know, and things that things that I didn't know, and probably won't need to know, are just good knowledgeable things to have anyway. So the test aside and passing the test aside, I just thought it was a great learning experience too, studying for the test.
What were you most surprised by on the study questions? Really, I have to know this, or yeah, I guess I better know that. What was your reaction to to prepping in certain areas?
Well, again, I can't. The SBE, you kind of find an agreement. You can't really talk too much about the content of the test, but I can tell you that it's very well rounded, and it's a lot of general knowledge things that. The way they phrase it is for the senior level engineer, if you have 10 years of solid, engineering experience, maybe with a little management involved, you should know most of what's on this quiz. It shouldn't be super hard. And I did. I found that generally probably 70 to 80% I just knew the answer to, just from experience. But then there was that 10 or 15% that really was not directly radio related, but was more just general engineering related. Just kind of very basic TV questions, very basic things like satellite, that sort of thing, that are just kind of general knowledge questions that I didn't really know because I hadn't had experience with it. So I think that was what was surprising, is it's not 100% just radio stuff. It's very well rounded, and there's a lot of information in there. And then of course there's one essay question that's fairly involved, where you have to in most cases do a design of something. So that was also a good part of the test as well.
Those essay questions, I find it's best if you answer those by starting out, "It was a dark and stormy night."
Yeah, just fill it with a lot of small words. But again, I took the test the first time, and I kind of knew after taking it, like, I just didn't get a good feeling about it. And again, they give you the opportunity to retake it. But I kind of knew what I was in for, and studied a little more, studied a little harder, and was good the second time around.
Good deal. Glad you passed it. Glad you're among the certified senior radio engineers, right? CSRE? Yep. Okay. Hey, we're going to take a break right now and hear about our sponsor, Axia Audio. And in fact, Burke, I believe, is going to bring up a couple of interesting pictures that I'm going to tell you about. Axia Audio is a company that, they didn't invent IP, right? But I tell you, they pioneered ways to get audio over IP in a very low latency, unbuffered, and completely linear manner. It's called Livewire, and there's a book written about it. The book is by Steve Church, co-authored by Skip Peasy. Both gentlemen have been guests on this podcast, Steve Church and Skip Peasy. And of course, Steve is the founder of Telos Systems, and Telos is the parent company of Axia Audio. Axia makes audio consoles, audio routing systems, and switching systems, make just a variety of things that you need to build a studio. And more equipment out on the marketplace just connects right to Livewire. In fact, we were talking with a company from India just at the NAB show. They're going to be building some accessories that plug right into Livewire. There's now this license that companies can get. They invest $500, and they're on board. They get all the schematics and source code and some expertise to help them implement Livewire into their own designs. Well, here's a few pictures I'd like to pass along and show you. This is... golly, I'm not sure I know where this one is. Oh, this is I think this is in Paris. Sorry, the picture's awfully small here at my end. Yes, Energy in Paris, France. I didn't recognize it with the lights on. Usually this studio is kind of darkened, but this is in Paris at Energy. They're replacing all their PR&E consoles. Those are high-end, beautiful analog consoles, replacing all their PR&E consoles with Axia consoles. That's a big element. Oh, my goodness, that is a big element console. There are over 2,200 Axia consoles on the air now, or in production duty around the world. Burke is going to bring up a couple more pictures here as we go along. I think Show and Tell is great, and if you want to see plenty of pictures, you can go to the Axia website, as Burke is doing here, and go to the client area. It's the client gallery. You can go there directly, clients.axiaaudio.com. clients.axiaaudio.com. This one is in Prague, Czech Republic. The Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty facility there. It's a gorgeous facility. It's high tech. It's high security. They have a total of 49 studios there at Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, all connected by IP, by Ethernet IP infrastructure. They have, in fact, they've got 4,000 streams going all at the same time. There you saw, just for a second, a rack of iPorts. Those are Telos products. So Telos makes IP codecs that plug right into Livewire. They have 2 Ethernet ports on them. On the back of those units, there's one Ethernet port that goes to the Livewire network and another Ethernet port that goes out to their WAN. And this allows Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty to send a great deal of audio to places all around the world as they distribute their audio. These are the backs of some racks here. Normally, you wouldn't put your Axia audio nodes all in the same rack like this, but this worked out best for Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty to do the wiring like this, to get a whole bunch of inputs and outputs in the same area. But oftentimes what you'll do, or what you'll normally do, is put an audio node where the equipment is, next to the satellite receivers, or next to the CD players, or your other audio codecs and such, near the microphones. Because it's a distributed system, you don't have to bring all the wiring back to the central wiring area. You can wire your audio to be close to the gear that it serves. Hey, I'm going to ask Andy Linton to mention a word or two here. Oh, in fact, look, there's a studio in Ireland that Andy wired up. Isn't that Andy?
Sure. Well, that couldn't have worked better if we'd planned it, could it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a station we did in the Midlands in Ireland, in Athlone, called iRadio. And that's looking through the window, which is why you can see the reflections there, looking through the window from one studio to another. And that's a twin frame element console. That's one of 4 studios they've got there, 5 studios they've got there, with 2 radio stations. And yeah, that's through one of the other windows. So 5 studios they've got there and 2 radio stations coming out of that building. And so you can see that was a nice installation. And just adding my little note of sales pitch there to what Kirk was saying, we did a station for that same company a year previous to that. It was a digital system, but not Axia, and I think it costs somewhere in the region of $5,000 in multi-core cable. And then we did that radio station, which was the same specification, but they went with Axia happily, and I think we had to buy, 1 box of Cat5 cable.
I'm not sure if the folks at Belden or other cable companies like us or not, because you sure do use a lot less cable. Andy, thanks for that. I've got to visit that studio while it was under construction, and in fact, I thought I was going to go to Athlone, Ireland, and help Andy out, right? Help him maybe do a little configuration, or if he did something wrong, kind of correct him. No, he was all completely on track, understood it, and I had nothing to do except ooh and ah and take some pictures.
And we went and saw the big AM side at Athlone, didn't we? Which was decommissioned, but the tower's still there.
That'd be a good one to steal some copper from.
Yeah, there'll be a lot underneath that ground. That's been there a long time. That's the first national broadcast station in the world.
Wow. Hey, just to wrap this up, there's another picture.
And there
of
it
this
is
station
again,
in Athlone. They have several studios there. Check it out on the web. I love to do show and tell. If you want to see some of the 2,200 Axia consoles that are around the world, you can go to clients.axiaaudio.com and check it out. I think you'll like it. You can download also Intro to Livewire, the document there from the White Pages section, and learn all about Axia Audio. Appreciate you checking it out. And thanks to Axia for being a sponsor of This Week in Radio Tech. All right, guys, it's time to head right into War Stories. What if we pick on Andy first? Andy?
I'm terribly unprepared because I don't have a lot of war stories. Although there was one that came to mind the other day. I was talking to a journalist and about portable recorders, and he was trying to pick one of the plethora of mini little recorders that you can get for reporters to use these days. And we got to talking about how it used to be in the old days when you had to carry a reel-to-reel tape recorder around on your shoulder. And it reminded me of one occasion a long time ago when I was a radio journalist, and I had a portable battery-powered reel-to-reel recorder which had 5-inch reels. I can't remember the manufacturer. I think it was some Japanese thing, Teletone or something like that. I think it was quite good at the time. And I had I think it was a Shure microphone. So I'd gone off to the press conference to record some very important interview with a politician. But unfortunately, as I got out of the car, I dropped the microphone onto the sidewalk. And didn't think anything of it, except when I got into the venue, I found, of course, that the microphone no longer worked. And I was able to ascertain that the capsule had failed from me dropping it on the ground. And the only thing I had with me was a little small leather pouch with emergency tools in it, a couple of screwdrivers and a pair of pliers and a pair of wire cutters. So what am I going to do here? So what I did in the end, and this was all while the press conference was being prepared, was took the back panel off the tape recorder, took the little loudspeaker out of it, cut it out and took it out, and I then, with some duct tape, I twisted the 2 wires from the back of the speaker into the 2 wires that came out of the back of the now dead microphone capsule, and that worked. And I gaffer taped the speaker onto the top of the microphone. It looked pretty stupid, but it worked, and you know what? It wasn't bad quality either.
Amazing. So the broadcast, went out without a hitch. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it was a perfectly good interview. It looked stupid, but it wasn't TV, so who cares?
Wow. It wasn't TV. Now there you go. That's a good statement. It wasn't TV. Chris, what have you got for us for a war story? Can you riff off that or give us? You had a Plan B story, didn't you?
Oh, I actually there are two. The first one is more of a funny one. So I'm out doing some routine maintenance, and I went up to the transitor site for one of my stations. And this transitor site, I have a T1 as the main audio line coming in, but that also has a microwave STL, 950 megahertz STL, that also provides audio as a second feed. So I come walking in, and I hear I have some broadcast tools, silent sensor switchers in the transitor building. So, for example, if the audio goes away on the T1, it'll automatically switch over to the microwave link, and that serves as a backup. Well, generally what happens is with these broadcast tools alarms, once they trip, the beeper, the alarm continues to go off even after the audio comes back up and it switches back. So typically I'll come in and almost always we'll find the silent sensor alarm going off because at some point between visits, somebody fell asleep at the switch or something and had some dead air and it tripped the silent sensor. So I just by instinct just go over and I reset the alarms and silence them. Well, I walk in and sure enough the alarm's going off. I'm like, oh, well, okay, somebody overnight or something must have fell asleep in the studio. So I go over to hit reset. All of a sudden, I'm just kind of glancing around. I look at the mod monitor, and there's no audio. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And all of a sudden, the audio, all of a sudden the beepers go off again for the silent sensor. And I'm like, and the audio comes back. And I went, okay, audio's back. I can silence the alarm. Silence the alarm, the audio goes away. I did this, honestly, and it's kind of embarrassing. Took me 3 or 4 times of messing with this button and swearing and all this other stuff to remember that the way that the switch works is as soon as I reset the switch, if it was in the backup position, it goes back to main. Well, what had happened was the Interplex, the T1 card, got scrambled and needed to be rebooted. So there was no audio coming down the T1 line. It was coming down the microwave link. So it sensed silence and was playing on the backup path. And every time I hit reset, it tried to switch it back over to the T1. There was no audio. It would time out an alarm and switch back to the microwave link. So every time I reset the button, I kept taking the station off the air. Over and over and over. I was like, come on, man. And I finally said, like the 3rd or 4th time, I went, oh, wait a minute. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And I opened up the T1 box. And sure enough, the alarm light was on, and there was a problem. Like, oh, my God, I couldn't believe it. I was so frustrated because every time I reset the thing, we'd go off the air. And then the silent sensor would trip, and it'd start beeping, and it'd come back on the air. And I'd go, oh, okay, problem fixed, hit reset, thing would go off again. And, it just never, it so rarely happens that kind of a situation exists that it just never occurred to me to go, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's a problem.
What is it? Yeah, I've said that same thing to myself too. Oh, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Oh yeah, I'm getting mad. I'm like, I'm swearing at it. I'm throwing stuff at it. I'm getting angry, and just get ready to fire off an email to broadcast tools saying their stuff's junk and all this stuff. And whoops, it was my fault.
Jeez. All right. Mr. Tobin, let's go to you. See if we can give you a chance to tell us about a Plan B war story or any war story. What you got?
Well, I have one recently occurred this past weekend for July 4th. We do this broadcast on 1010 Wins every year for the last 10 years. We cover the Macy's fireworks display here in New York City. You may say to yourself, fireworks on the radio? Yes. What we do is get there about 6 hours earlier and start talking about the event, interviewing folks, man on the street type of thing at the venue, and start building up to the big event, which you can watch on television. NBC TV does the coverage, or from the rooftops, or maybe a boat on the river. It's on the Hudson River on the west side of Manhattan. So we come to our little dilemma this past weekend. we order lines from Verizon, standard BRI, ISDN circuit that is, and a POTS line for communications. ISDN for the backhaul of the radio station audio to the studio. Well, Saturday, our guys get out to the venue to get things ready. POTS line is working just fine. ISDN, some trouble. Call Verizon, and we'll send somebody out. Okay, nobody shows up Saturday night. We figure we can hear something on the ISDN circuit. We're assuming we'll be able to get it resolved. According to Verizon, everything's working. We tested it. You're good to go. All right. Monday, July 4th comes. We get on site by 8 a.m. Broadcast is starting at 3 p.m. that day. ISDN still not working. Make a phone call to Verizon, and they tell me there's nobody available. It's July 4th. It's a skeleton crew, but there's nobody in the repair service. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. We need the service. Yeah, well, according to our records, the computer says the service was never turned on. Can't help you. Goodbye. I'm like, wow. So left that be. On site, I, thank goodness, have a good relationship with the NBC television folks and All Mobile Video, who are participants in putting on this event for the TV folks that we work with. Went up to the tech manager, Mike Matthews, and said, I've got a dilemma. He's a former radio guy, by the way, 30 years ago, but he did radio, so he understands what we do in our business. I said to him, here's my situation. Do you have some way for me to get audio back to our studios? He creatively finds a way for me to have a plan B. And that is, we backhauled our two radio stations. It was our AM station, 1010 Winds, and our FM sister station, 92.3 Now, which is a top 40 station that was going to be there to cover the events, talking to people with radio mics and everything. We backhauled our radio stations on the third and fourth channel of the embedded video audio of the Macy's event. So when you were watching July 4th, video on NBC Television Network, channels 1 and 2 was the music for the fireworks in stereo, all that wonderful stuff, and channels 3 and 4 were my two radio stations being beamed to satellite, brought back down to 30 Rock, and then from there on ISDN to our studios.
Oh my goodness.
That was plan B, because we couldn't get ISDN to work, and I only had one POTS line. So we used POTS lines for comms and a backup POTS codec in the event everything else, so to speak, hit the bed. And it was good. So I have to, kudos to the crew at AMV and the NBC TV folks for being able to come out in the pinch and help us out. But that falls in the scenario of having good relationships with folks in your town, technically. And thank goodness that we have a good relationship with a lot of the TV folks, and it worked. I mean, it was last-minute planning. I kid you not. Satellite truck wasn't even hot to the bird yet. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. They weren't even scheduled to go hot until 3 p.m. So our broadcast began at 3. So I made a deal, and they were able to go hot about 15 minutes early. We did the test, and we were up and running, and things were good. So that's my wonderful war story for this weekend.
That actually ties in well with mine, because we do the synchronized fireworks as well, and we've been doing it for many, many years. And we, most of the time, up until a few years ago, it was solely just one ISDN line would run the audio from the firing island, and that was that. Well, we began to have issues where we would get dropouts, either on the line or from the DAT tape, or for whatever reason, there were dropouts during the live broadcast, and that was unacceptable. And so I had to come up with a plan that kind of covered every possible scenario with this, because if we don't have the audio on, we've got a problem with these fireworks. So now, the last 2 years, what we've done, and again, this goes with planning, is we the other part of this is we have two broadcasts going on at the same time. We have broadcasts going on from the stages that are out in the field, and then also from the firing island, where we actually do the music and some of the interviews. So we have POTS lines going, we have ISDN lines going, but we've taken to the point now where up the week leading up to the event, we get the lines installed 2 weeks in advance. And as part of the qualification, before we'll even start to use them, is we actually take the units out there and run them for 24 hours straight and see if there are any drops or any loss of frames or links or anything else. On top of that, we also have the POTS line, but then we simultaneously, when we start the music at the firing island, we simultaneously play the same track on our automation system and on a CD. So, and above that, we have a switcher hooked up that can put the CD directly to air, bypassing the studio in case things really go bad, and we have a power loss in the studio, or the console dies or something. I mean, you would really have to work hard to destroy this because it's become such a big event that failure is just not an option. And so when we plan this out, just to qualify the lines to do the broadcast, we have to go through an entire 24-hour test. If it fails, it has to be repaired and retested. And then, a week out after we've done that, we actually play the audio down the ISDN line through the equipment we're going to use and make sure that works. So, we've really gotten it down to overkill. The other side of that is that since we've done that, we've never had a problem. So it's worthwhile doing. It's a lot of work, but, it's talking about we have a plan A, B, C, and D in these situations.
Hey, Andy, you've got something else you were gonna talk about.
Yeah, just one other short story, which Chris Tarr reminded me of. Then, seeing as how we're admitting when we do something slightly foolish, I was inspecting a transmitter site in the UK a couple of years ago, and it was this radio station had 2 transmitter sites, separate links to each one, but the way they had their backup organized was that. If the microwave failed, it would switch to rebroadcast the other transmitter site with just an FM tuner sitting there at the site. So I walked across the field to this site, and one of the things I do when I go there is hit the backup audio just to make sure it's okay. So I switched to backup. Then I got my mod monitor out and I'm setting it all up, and I could see on the transmitter there was audio. And I'm slowly, plugging in the mod monitor, and then the mod monitor comes up, and I'm looking at the audio on the mod monitor, and yep, that's fine, that's perfect. I had listened to it. There's a song playing, and then my phone rings, and it was a different radio station going out, because unbeknown to me, at some stage, the FM tuner had decided it was going to do a scan, and it stopped on the competitor's radio station. So yeah, that was me being foolish.
I've done that. True story. This one kind of rattled something in my head. This was actually just over a few months ago. I was doing some work for a Christian group. They have a translator, and we put that on the air. And I went in, and they were having some issues with their tuner. So I put a new tuner, and I did the same thing. I hit the scan button, but where did it stop? A hard rock station. Didn't know it. And the president of the board was driving around listening to the signal improvement as they're playing this hard rock music, and I finally, after about 5 minutes, caught it and quick flipped the switch over, and he pulls up and he goes, "Yeah, the translator sounds great. Interesting choice of music, though."
Oh no! Oh golly! I've got a story like that, but I don't know. I'm not sure the statute of limitations has run out yet. I think I'm not brave enough to tell that story. It was about the wrong audio on a Christian radio station that I was doing work for. Wasn't my fault, but yeah, I had some splaining to do. Kirk, how could this have happened? Is that kind of meeting? Hey, let's. I got one story real quick, and I think Burke, you've got a picture to show. I'm going to talk about a little bit of work I had to do on a Harris 2.5K FM transmitter, and there it is. There's the classic Harris FM 2.5K. I love this transmitter. It was always pretty easy to take care of, not really too much of a problem. There's the tuning in the low. Pardon?
That's true. That was one of the easier ones to work on.
Yeah. And the only one thing I didn't like about it was that the control circuitry was all 110, 115 volts. So you want to turn the plates on or off, film it on and off. You had to, you're dealing with, with 110 volts coming at the barrier strip there. Harris really kind of got a little cheap on that. They could have put a relay in there. Please help me out here. Well, now let me show you the next picture that Burke has ready to show. It's a chemical product that works very, very well for what it's designed to do. And it's a product that really, that one. Don't get that product anywhere near a transmitter that has silver or anodized. I don't know what. Maybe you guys can help me out with what might be on there inside the cavity. I guess it's silver because the tube socket and inside the cavity there are areas that may be coated with silver or plated with silver for really good connections, all the finger stock and such. At the transmitter site, the the owner of the station was out there by himself one day, and he noticed that there was some roaches in the building, and he thought he would do something to get rid of them without calling me, because I was pretty expensive. So he went to the store and bought some roach proof, which does a great job for what it's designed for. He sprinkled, it's a powder, right? And I imagine he sprinkled it all over the floor, all around the transmitter. Well, the transmitter has a pretty high velocity ventilation system through it. It sucks a lot of air in and it blows a lot of air out the top. Not as much as a 25 kilowatt transmitter. This is a 2.5 kilowatt transmitter, but still it moves a lot of air through it. And so it moved a lot of this dust through it. And the blower in the transmitter did a fantastic job of taking the air around the transmitter and sucking it in, even through the filters, because the filters were on the transmitter, and blowing this roach-proof product that was in the air right through the tube. Well, a few days later, the power of the transmitter started dropping, and then I don't know if it ever actually went off the air, but they were not at 100% power. So they called me in, oh, well, Kirk's expensive, better call him. And I came out there, and every silver surface inside that transmitter, and by the way, I kept that transmitter pretty clean. Every silver surface was jet black, charcoal black. And it was whatever the chemical in the roach proof is, whatever kills roaches is not so good with silver either. And it took, odorless non-staining powder by Copper Bright. Probably somebody in our chat room could be a chemical engineer and tell me what exactly happened. But I'll tell you, the chemical oxidized the silver, according to a steam clock in the chat room. And yeah, that's what it did. It oxidized that silver. Oh my goodness, I was polishing and cleaning. I mean, first I got out the Formula 409. I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but oh my gosh, clean and clean and clean. They were off the air for probably about 5 hours while I cleaned the thing up. And since this was laden in the air, I mean, I had to take the tube out. I had to take the tube socket apart, undo all the little capacitors and all the little things all around the tube socket. This has been years and years ago, so I don't remember all that much, but oh, golly. XYZ in the chat room says it's boric acid. And Bob says it would have eaten the electroplating. Yeah, I guess that's what it did. It ate the silver electroplating or whatever. It may have been nickel. I don't know. But it was a nice, shiny silver before, and it was jet black afterwards. So a lot of work.
Clean all that?
How did I clean it?
Did it clean up okay?
It cleaned up about 98%. There was still... I could have put more elbow grease into getting the last vestiges off of it, but it would have been another couple of hours. And I got it off. The tube socket ended up getting pretty clean, and all the finger stock ended up getting pretty clean. So I was satisfied with it. And the transmitter then continued to run and run and run, and it didn't have any spurs or any spurious oscillations. It was just fine. So and full power.
The only thing I remember about those 2.5 cases is that the IPA section in them were horrible.
Yeah.
Was it a 250? No, it was the smaller one.
Yeah, it was like a 3CX or a 4C 150. It didn't have the X. It had glass instead of ceramic.
Right. And it was the IPA was in this tiny little box. And it had these just tiny controls, and the IPAs just never really worked right. And they were designed back for the MS-15 exciters, so they didn't put out a lot of power. The IPA didn't. So with two of those boxes, one of the first modifications they did was bypass the IPA, and they throw like an FX50 exciter in there, plenty of drive for that transmitter. But I had more problems with IPAs in those transmitters.
I did the same thing. Pulled the IPA out and just drove it directly. There was a little series. What's the word I'm looking for? Not a choke. It was it knocked down the amount of power, but if there was reflected power from the next stage, it would keep that reflected power from reflecting back into the exciter and causing more problems. It would knock that down. What's the word I'm looking for?
Circulator.
And no, an RF, it's just some resistors. So it's all 50 ohms, but you get, you put 10 watts in, you get 8 watts out. What's the word I'm looking for?
Oh, it's just now I'm doing it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm doing the same thing.
An attenuator, yeah?
Attenuator.
A fabulator.
No, an attenuator, I guess.
Oh, attenuator. That's it. That's a resistive attenuator. Durr. And it just absorbs.
Non-inductive, I hope.
Yeah, right. Not inductive. It absorbed a few watts of power, and but my question was, do you remember leaving that in? Of course, if I couldn't think of the name, how did I remember the thing?
No, actually, I didn't leave it in. All I did was there's one relay you bypass to tell the transmitter that the IPA is there, and I just went directly into the PA. I have a feeling that probably if there was a major catastrophe, it'd probably smoke the exciter. But those are easy enough to fix. So, I didn't make it more difficult than I thought it needed to be.
You mentioned a little relay that would decide if the IPA was working out, if the PA tube had drive. And I remember that there was some kind of a little tap off of was it a grid circuit? It was just enough. It got just enough RF to get rectified to then run a relay. And that relay would not energize unless the PA tube was getting enough drive from the previous stage, whether that stage was the original IPA tube or whether it was a more powerful exciter that you put in.
Right, but it was actually the way it took the tap was it took the tap off of the IPA. So if you didn't have the IPA functioning, even if you had drive to the PA, it wouldn't turn on.
Ah, okay. All right, if you say so. I remember it differently, but I won't fight you for it.
Yeah. Well, I just, the reason I remember that is I remember going directly into the PA with the exciter, and the dang thing still wouldn't turn on until I bypassed the light.
Yeah. I remember hearing that little, it was almost like a timer relay, but that little relay would go, after
it was part of the control ladder, yeah. So if it wasn't ready, it wouldn't allow the transmitter to turn on.
Wow. Hey, we're going to have to go here pretty soon. Andy, any last-minute words for us, words from radio engineering in Ireland?
Well, I don't know. We're kind of riding the wave of a recession here, so things are not as busy as we'd like. But what tends to happen in this when this sort of thing happens is that people get things fixed. So we're doing a lot more work over here, fixing things and making things stay working until radio stations' incomes pick up a bit, and they can buy some new equipment. So let's hope that happens soon. I think. But just briefly, have you guys there noticed much change in your business because of the recession?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I would. I know that we've cut back on some of our capital projects and pushed them off to later in the year, and I know a lot of our clients we do business with have cut back on things as well. But the repairs are up. That's you're definitely in the right place for that. We have been doing more repairs where we probably would have said, "Hey, you know what? It's end of life. We'll move on." We've decided to sort of extend the end of life for at least another quarter into the third quarter of this year.
Yeah, I'm talking to a client at the moment who are refitting one of their studios, and they're doing this because I went to them and said, "Look, guys, this studio here, this is you've had that console in there for 15 years. That's going to fail soon, and that's your main studio. You don't want that to fail." So I had to go along to them and try and persuade them to spend, I don't know, I think it was something like $25,000 on a brand new studio. And the guy said to me the other day, "Why are you asking us to spend $25,000 in a recession?" And I said, "Because you didn't spend it 5 years ago. That's why."
Good point. Yeah. Anything we have that's mission critical to the broadcast, we will definitely be considering spending the money to make it, keep it going. But ancillary stuff that we sort of can waver on, we'll do that. But you're right. Yeah, if you have your mission critical, one studio does everything and it's 15, 20 years old, you're playing with fire, and you're definitely right. Yeah. The amount of time you're off, the commercial loss if you're a commercial station, the impressions in the market, the fact that you've just given away your dial's position to the competition because you're not there for your listeners, that's probably got a value of equal to maybe the cost of a studio replacement.
Yeah,
if not
it has
more.
very easily, yeah.
I think that I think that's where engineers today have kind of, in this economy, the good ones have kind of shown their value. Because we do have to make those decisions every day. Is this something that is critical enough that we need to replace now? Is this something that I can repair? Is this something that I can kind of postpone a little bit? And really, that's kind of what's separating, the really good management engineering manager types from the guys who are just out in the field is, making those decisions on a day-to-day basis in terms of what's best for your budget, what's best for the company's budget, that sort of thing. And I certainly know I'm in the same boat as Chris. I mean, if it's something that is really important and critical to the operation, we don't mess around. We replace it. But I find more and more I'm seeing things and go, well, you know what? I think that's something that we can just take care of. We can fix. We can find, we do a lot more calling around our other stations in our company. Maybe somebody has one of those in storage or something similar that we can put back into service. We do a lot more things like that now.
It sure is interesting the way a recession will cause people to behave. I mean, even in our personal lives. Well, those tires can run a bit longer. I don't need to change the oil until 10,000 miles go by on the car. But we do notice in my business, of course, I kind of straddle both sides of this because I'm part owner of 4 radio stations. And then I also work for an equipment manufacturer. And as far as the equipment manufacturer, we're noticing actually quite a jump in business over the last 2 years. 2009 and most of 2010, business was either flat. It was kind of flat internationally and a bit down in the U.S., but we're noticing now that people are responding to the pent-up demand. Hey, we've needed this console, we've needed this audio processor, we've needed this phone system, and we couldn't afford to buy it last year, but now we're writing checks again. So we're noticing it picking up here, not everywhere, and not as much as everybody would like. In our own business, in our radio stations, we're noticing a slight increase in our advertising. It's of course we're trying to get better and better at selling, but it's been a tough couple of years for us as radio operators.
Would you say that the uptick?
I think people are. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Kirk, do you think the uptick might be because of the IP technology and the people are able to sort of leverage that across many platforms rather than just the old traditional analog, audio in, audio out, and everything is limited or point to point? Just curious.
I think engineers and engineering managers that see that, hey, IP is really a good glue to bring things together. It's a good common technology. Then yeah, some people buy new consoles, and whether they're from Axia or from somebody else, if they're an IP technology, they buy them because they need a new console, and maybe they're just buying one standalone console and it doesn't really have to go much of anywhere else. But sure, people who are forward thinking, looking ahead, and needing for things to work together at the lowest possible investment, then yeah, they're going in with IP technology for their remotes and for their phones and for their consoles, and even getting the audio out to the transmitter side. Sure. Andy, you were about to add one more comment.
Well, yeah, you just said it, really. I think that what is happening is that if people right now can't afford to maybe do a complete refit of their entire radio station, but they need to do one studio, then they are saying, well, look, let's go with IP, because maybe next year, maybe the year after, we can add to it. And they know that it's going to be very easy to add to. And that's actually, we're finding that's actually a good selling point.
Sure. Hey, Chris Tarr, you got a last comment before we have to run?
No.
Oh, good. You said it all.
Nothing to add. I said what I needed to say.
All right. Hey, guys, we got to go. We're a bit over time, and I sure have enjoyed this war story episode. Thanks to Andy Linton from TotalBroadcast.net in Ireland. Andy is a consultant there, along with his business partner, Andy Green. That's got to be a little bit... That's worse than what we have here, 2 Chris's.
Well, people call our company and say, can I speak to Andy? And you can always say yes.
That's right. Oh, man. Well, good luck to you, Andy. We appreciate you being with us again, and hope you'll join us on another future episode. And thanks for staying up late.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go get some sleep. Hey, Chris Tobin from Manhattan. Thanks for being with us from CBS Radio.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. And cheers to Andy.
And Chris Tarr from Mukwonago, Wisconsin, and the Intercom stations there. Oh, thanks. Oh, yes. Thanks, Bert.
Thanks. It was a pleasure being here.
All righty. And Bert McQuinn back at the studio. Thank you for switching and trying to keep up with our madcap antics. Appreciate it very much. Hey, if you want to subscribe to This Week in Radio Tech, it's easy to do. Probably the easiest place to do it is to go to the twit.tv website. Go to twit.tv/twert. And there are options there for listening to or viewing the podcast right there on the website. Or you can download the file to put it into your iPod or Zune or whatever player you might have, or you can subscribe using iTunes or any number of other feed systems, and they're all right there on that page, so you can do it very conveniently there.
By the way, I want to say we are also now on the official Twit Roku channel as well.
Woohoo! So if you've got a Roku player, that's pretty cool.
Great.
Got one in my bedroom, so me and my wife can lay back at night and flip on the Roku and
watch
old
yourself.
Kirk.
TMI.
Laying in bed with your wife, watching yourself. How nice.
That's right.
Hey,
so
baby,
check out
you know
the Twitch.
what,
You have to add it. Go to the channels on your Roku player, your TV player, and add the Twitch channel, and then look for us there. We're there along with all the other great.
Baby,
Twitch
you know what gets me in the mood? A little bit of me. You know what I'm saying?
A little bit of me. All righty, Andy, that'll help you out too. You have Roku players in
I have
Ireland?
no idea what you're talking about, but it sounds pretty kinky.
Well, it's the Twit Network. Nah, it's not very kinky. All right, guys, we got to run. Thanks to Axia Audio for sponsoring this episode of This Week in Radio Tech. Check them on the web at axiaaudio.com and check out all those pictures from client stations. Lots of ideas there for putting in consoles for yourself at clients.axiaaudio.com. We got to go. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.